Hello everyone and welcome to Merlin's Manor. Today I'm going to be reviewing Clank Catacombs, which is published by Dire Wolf. Clank Catacombs is a deck building game with a fantasy theme. This is the third version of Clank that I have played. I have played the original Clank and I have played Clank Legacy. I have not played Clank in Space. At the end of this video, during my final thoughts, I will make some comparisons between the other two versions of Clank that I have played and Clank Catacombs, so stick around for that. For now, let's get into talking about how Clank Catacombs plays with a brief gameplay overview. So just like other versions of Clank, you will start out with a very basic deck of 10 cards, 2 of which are going to give you Clank. They're called stumble cards. And so that's going to be bad every time you do that. And because the more Clank that you produce, the more likely the dragon is going to hurt you and eventually knock you out or kill you. Now, each time you make Clank, you will put a cube in a holding area right here. And eventually, those are going to go into this bag here to be drawn out if you don't manage to get rid of the Clank before a dragon attack happens. Your other starting cards give you buy power, which is shown by that emblem right there. That blue 1 right there is giving you 1 buy power. They give you movement, like this foot right there. Use the buy power to buy stronger cards with more power, more movement, as well as swords for fighting monsters like this guy right here. And often there are special abilities on a lot of cards that you buy from the river that either happen when you play the card or sometimes even when you acquire the card. If you buy special cards from the card river, it's going to refill at the end of your turn. And if any cards come out with this dragon symbol on them, then it's going to trigger a dragon attack. And you're going to draw the amount of cubes out of the bag depending on how enraged the dragon currently is, which is shown by this rage meter here. And the rage meter is going to go up whenever artifacts are stolen, as well as some other actions. The primary objective of this game is to find an artifact and escape the dungeon. But you will also accumulate points from cards that you buy, from prisoners that you rescue, from tokens that you find, as well as gold when you finish the game is worth 1 point each. Clank Catacombs works a little different than other Clank games when it comes to exploring the dungeon, in that it does not have a static board, but rather you start out on the starting tile, and as you move, as you walk off a tile, you're going to place a new tile. This makes navigating the dungeon a bit more of a mystery. You never really know how deep in the dungeon you're going to have to go in order to find an artifact, and how hard your journey back will be, especially since some effects will cause tiles to rotate, which could make things easier or harder on you. If you make it back to the purple colored tiles, then you're going to at least score points for everything you acquired in the dungeon, even if you get knocked out. But ultimately, you want to make it back to the home base there to get 20 points. If you get knocked out in one of these dark blue tiles, then you're going to score 0 points. And so you want to, at the very least, make it back to one of these purple tiles here. Now let's go ahead and get into the game review, starting with ease of access. This game is a fairly basic deck building game overall. There is a decent amount of things to learn at first, but a lot of the things are fairly intuitive once you get the basics down, especially if you've played other deck builders before. Now, it might not be the first deck builder I would recommend someone to play, because it does add a decent bit of extra things to learn, which makes knowing the basic deck building mechanics an advantage to you going in to be able to overall learn the game more easily. Clank Catacombs is a little more complex than base Clank or even Clank Legacy, mainly due to the tile placements and rules that surround tile placement, as well as the added way shrines, which you can see right here, and portal spots right there. Overall, it's not too difficult of a game to learn, but it's also not super basic either. Go ahead and get into the art and components now. The components overall are nothing special. They're fine. You have a sea of cardboard pieces that get the job done. The cards are your typical cheap Clank cards that you're probably going to want to sleeve. especially since this is a deck building game that will require plenty of shuffling, and your starting cards could quickly become obvious, and overall the cards are going to wear down fairly quickly between the combination of the quality of the cards as well as how much you're shuffling there. The star of the components really are the dungeon tiles. These are great. They're made out of pretty thick cardboard. It's going to hold up well. And the modular nature of the board adds a cool exploration feel to the game that is somewhat lacking in other versions. I also like this bag here, and you've got standard wooden cubes and meeples as well. Now the art is good. The artwork on the cards is kind of like a silly cartoon style. You've got this goblin right here. It's really endearing and fun. And provides an interesting dungeon to explore. And so this is kind of what the art looks like in a lot of these. Let's get into talking about the gameplay itself. Clank is one of my favorite deck builders, and Clank Catacombs does not let down when it comes to the gameplay. You've got several paths to victory. Are you going to focus on getting swords to kill monsters and get plenty of gold and other benefits from that? Are you going to go heavy on buying cards that give you gold or cards that give you points? But be careful about filling your deck up too much with these secret tomes that give you 7 points, because they clog up your deck. They don't really have a use when they come back out. But they do give you that 7 points apiece, so you might want to go after a few of those mid to late game. You're going to need a decent amount of movement to get around the dungeon. But if you don't plan on going too deep, maybe you go less on the movement. Or maybe you get lots of movement so you can run all over the dungeon, get tons of extra stuff. And there are way shrines that give you gold for every one you for the first one you visit. Then the second one gets you 2 gold. The third one gets you 3 gold, and so on. So if you're getting a lot of movement, you can move around the dungeon a lot and rack up a bunch of gold through those way shrines. There's also the push and pull between searching longer to get a better, more valuable artifact, or even a backpack so you can have 2 artifacts. Or just getting that bare minimum and trying to escape the dungeon quickly, thus putting the pressure on others to hurry up and get an artifact and get out, since you will start pulling extra cubes on your turn every time once you've escaped, making it to where others get knocked out a lot quicker. Also, managing Clank can be a bit of a push your luck thing, as there are valuable cards that force you to add more Clank. Or you can focus on cards that are going to get rid of Clank if they happen to come up while you have that Clank in your holding area, or you're adding Clank that turn. You can also focus on trashing some of your weaker starting cards, especially your original cards that are stumbles that give you Clank every time they come up. There is a lot of depth to play in this game, and every game feels so different. This has always been true about Clank, but it's especially true with the way the board setup is going to be so different each game. You don't know what it's going to look like. Now, the one potential downside with the nature of the way the board gets set up along the way is that by sheer bad luck, you could keep missing out on finding tiles that have artifacts. The ones that look like this, that have this right here. You could miss out on a lot of those. And you can be clear on the other side of the board from where they keep showing up as others happen to come across the right tiles, and they're not exactly close to you because you went different ways. Now, this is somewhat mitigated by the portals that will at least allow you to jump across the board, so long as portals come out in a convenient spot for that. Ultimately, win or lose, I always have a lot of fun with Clank, and Clank Catacombs adds even more fun with the random dungeon generation that happens as you explore. As Forrest Gump might say, Clank Catacombs is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And that just adds to the gameplay experience. I really enjoy Clank Catacombs gameplay. And there's also a solo mode to this. I didn't realize there was a solo mode until another YouTuber that I follow did a playthrough. I encourage you to check out C4's playthrough videos if you want more information. He did a great job of playing through the 6-game campaign over on his channel. I'll leave a link in the description for you to check out. Now, basically, the solo campaign is a 6-game campaign which uses a free Dire Wolf app to run the campaign. It's going to give you certain extra objectives that you need to accomplish before you can actually escape, as well as to score extra points, get cool stuff, and get a better grade. You see, each round you're going to get graded on what you were able to do, and at the end you're going to get an overall score. And so you want to try and get A's or at least B's. The app will also have you make choices along the way that are going to affect what happens in the campaign and what benefits you get. The app is also going to cause certain things to happen that will ramp up the danger and force you to get a move on, and may even cause your path that you were counting on to escape to no longer be a viable route. I played through the campaign with my wife where we discussed what we should do, and it was a lot of fun for us to play through it together. A++ experience. I would play through it again, which you can do and make different choices and see how things would have affected things along the way if you'd made this choice or that choice. If you are against utilizing an app, then the solo mode here would not be for you. But if you're okay with utilizing an app to basically DM your experience in the dungeon, then I say give this one a try, as it is a lot of fun and can be quite the tense experience at times. Now let's get into talking about replayability. Clank has always been a highly replayable game to me just due to the various areas of focus you can have that lead to victory, the abundance of different cards that you can buy, the randomization of when dragon attacks will occur, and so much more. The one drawback to the original Clank when it came to replayability was the static board that is exactly the same every game. Clank Legacy improved on that a little, in that at least through the Legacy campaign, the board gets changed along the way. But eventually you're left with, again, a static board for future games once you've finished the campaign. Clank Catacombs really improves on the replayability due to the random board generation through placing tiles as you explore. Every game is going to feel so different because the dungeon itself is going to be different pretty much every game that you play. I would say this is the most replayable of all of the Clank games for that reason. So now let's get into my final thoughts on Clank Catacombs. I really enjoy Clank Catacombs, and I rate it an 8.5 out of 10. This will probably wind up being my most played version of Clank just because of how replayable it is with the different boards set up each time and that aspect of exploration that other versions are missing. The random generation of the board as you go can lead to some frustration, however, if you just aren't getting the tiles that you want as fast as others exploring across the map from you may be getting those things. But since there are so many different things that you can focus on and portals that can help you get across the board if you get stuck away from some artifacts or other things you want to chase after, I don't personally find this to be too problematic. As far as how this game compares to other versions of Clank that I have played, I place it squarely in the middle when it comes to overall ranking. I rate the original Clank an 8 out of 10. Clank Catacombs is definitely an improvement on its more basic predecessor due to how much more different each game is going to be. I do, however, rate Clank Legacy Acquisitions Incorporated a 9 out of 10 just because we had a lot of fun with the campaign and completing the various objectives. I also enjoyed the semi-cooperative nature of Clank Legacy, where on the one hand, you are out for yourself, trying to score the most points to be the winner of the game, but you also need to make sure that objectives are getting completed, and so you're somewhat working together to make sure those objectives get completed. And you really don't want people to get knocked out below ground because it will lead to bad things in future games, which really mitigates any temptation to try to run in, grab an artifact, and get out really quick. Though in the end, sometimes trying to win will lead you to just go, oh well, about the consequences for future us. I'm going to do what's in my current best interest to win this game right here. It has a nice push and pull there between those elements. And while Legacy is still my favorite overall version of Clank for the in-depth campaign and how it forced you to work together somewhat, Clank Catacombs is ultimately the one that's going to get most replayed. It's the most replayable in the end. I highly recommend Clank Catacombs. It's a great deck building game with fun dungeon exploration. As always, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Check out some more of my reviews and gameplay, and I will catch you in the next one.